Thank you. Welcome to the Morongo Basin Municipal Advisory Council meeting for Monday, October 13th, 2014. If we could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Usually 30 agendas are enough, made 40 tonight. I know you ran out of agendas. If anyone, if like you're a couple and you took 2 agendas and you have an extra, maybe you'll pass it to somebody who needs it near you. Okay. And if we could, I'll pass it to our Secretary, Max Rossi, for roll call.
When I call your name, please also state the area that you are representing. Jack Duggan. Pioneer Town. Elizabeth Carmen.
Here.
Mike Lipsitz.
Here, Landers.
Mark Lundquist.
Here, Joshua Tree.
Pat Flanagan.
Here, Yucca Mesa? No.
That's her heights. Max Rossi, Wonder Valley. Gail Surratt. Mary Helen Tuttle. Thank you.
Okay, and adoption of the agenda. We'd like to approve the agenda, except for one change. Supervisor Ramos, I don't know if you're really a special guest since this is your council, but welcome. And the supervisor is heading out after this, so instead of being down at the bottom of the agenda, we're going to move him up. So other than that change, he would become item F, and everything else moved down. Any other changes? Okay, would someone make a motion? We adopt the agenda with the change? Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. We'll approve the agenda with changes. And so then, I asked Elizabeth Carmen, representative from Yucca Mesa, if she would introduce the supervisor, since she arranged originally for Supervisor Ramos to come. And so if you'll make the introduction, Elizabeth, we'll pass the gavel to Supervisor Ramos.
Our guest speaker tonight is Supervisor Ramos, who needs no formal introduction for anyone here tonight. My own admiration for him is only exceeded by my trust in his leadership. Let's put our hands together for our supervisor, James Ramos.
It's my pleasure to be here today to see this MAC moving forward.
Hey, that's my mic. Oh, sorry. Oh, here it is.
And to straighten out the mic situation, I guess. Thanks, Mike. But no, it's good. And you know, I seen an article in the paper that really looked at the MAC and really gave it a chance to expand. From the day one when we actually brought it up that we were going to put together a regional MAC, there were some questions and concerns that were there from the local paper. But I think after seeing it work and you see the regional issues that have come forward, there's also now an article saying that it's actually working for the betterment of the whole Morongo Basin. I think that deserves a round of applause for those donating their time. Some of the things that we're working on here in San Bernardino County, certainly that affect you. One of them that we're working on is water hauling. We've been really tackling that issue over and over and over. And we actually went to LA County and seen how they were actually working within the water hauling to actually start to issue permits. So one of the things that we're doing is looking at how they got to that point so we could bring it up and then present it to the CEO and to the other board members within San Bernardino County. And also looking at how every area is unique in where it is that it's building off of as far as the regional and the commerce that's going on. In the Redlands, San Bernardino area, certainly you're talking about the different warehouse and the jobs that are there, but here you're talking about the tourism that's going on. So we worked with EDA to create the Desert Mountain Tourism that's actually going to have its first summit and moving forward, trying to make sure people understand the beauty that's here. The beauty that's here that needs to stay beauty, the dark nights that need to have the dark nights that are here, and to make sure that people truly understand of the joys and what it is the community here in the Morongo Basin and the Gateway communities have to offer to the rest of San Bernardino County. Certainly, we're working on those things to make sure that they're moving forward. And another area, when we first got elected, was how the different solar developments were seeing the desert as somewhere that was just open, right? Driving by and seeing the desert as nobody lives there, and all these things, they'll put up solar fields. So myself and Supervisor Lovingood put together a moratorium against the solar industry. And we created that ordinance, and certainly we had input from the community, from BEAT, and from those others that we put together to hear from the community what's important. And we got a lot of those components in there. We got about 80% of what was there into the ordinance itself. Certainly there's some things that didn't get in there, but the ordinance was challenged just recently when we actually started looking at the sphere of influence, and that was in the Apple Valley area, where Solar was trying to put together a project that was outside of the ordinance and outside of the sphere of influence of Apple Valley. And it came before the board on an appeal. And I'm here to tell you that the board actually stood there and upheld the ordinance on a 3-2 vote to make sure the ordinance moved forward. And after that, you started to see the solar industry really starting to look at this ordinance as saying, this is something that's not going to be able to be moved around politically. This is something that's there, and it has the majority of the support from the Board of Supervisors. So much so that just recently you have another developer that came out and was looking at putting up a solar area here in this area that decided now that it's not worth it, that they're pulling up and not even pursuing it anymore. Because the ordinance stands there, and certainly it creates a balance between creating the business atmosphere, but making sure that we're protecting the pristine area that's here in the Joshua Tree area, the Morongo Basin, the Gateway communities to the area. And really, it sounds like it didn't take a lot, but it really did, because we ended up coming up here with Supervisor Rutherford, Supervisor Gonzalez, and Supervisor Lovingood. We all came through, and everybody starts to see, now that you're able to get outside of your districts and go in and be comfortable with the supervisors, you're able now to go into the other supervisors' districts to see the areas that we're actually making decisions on. So it's easy to make a decision when you haven't seen the area. But when you come out here and you see the beauty that's here, especially at nighttime, those dark skies that are there, then you start to understand, you know, this is a place where you want to come during the weekend to bring your kids so you can get away from the bustle that's in the main cities. This is an area in San Bernardino County that I think we need to actually highlight even more, even with the Board of Supervisors, to make sure they truly understand the beauty that the desert community, that the Morongo Basin has to offer San Bernardino County. And it's the tourism that goes through there. So we're having all that buy-in that's going on now, but we have to keep it up. We have to make sure that the supervisors continue to come out here. So much so that we're going to be advocating again to move the County Board of Supervisors meetings throughout the districts. And we're talking about bringing one out here into the Joshua Tree Center so that we could actually see, you'll see the Board of Supervisors here. And next year, hopefully, if things work out, we'll be able to move that forward. We brought it up with the other Board of Supervisors earlier, and there was consensus to do that. But now it's coming to the end of the year, and there's going to be a change in leadership. So we're hoping that after that takes place, we'll actually make sure that it comes to fruition. And that's the only way you start to see the supervisors really get out into the areas and truly understand what's taking place throughout San Bernardino County. Another area that's been dear to our hearts too also is the homeless issue. And we just met on the homeless issue itself. And when you start to look at the data that's being collected in San Bernardino County and the historical area and the data that's there, somehow there has been a lapse of people understanding the true need here in the Morongo Basin. And so we've actually put together and spoke up adamantly at the Interagency on Council of Homelessness, which we chair the Youth Homeless Committee on that. And we actually spoke up with Senator Feinstein's office as far as redefining the definitions of the HUD definition and what the schools are using. Because in the schools in San Bernardino County, they identify over 30,000 homeless kids. But yet under the HUD definition, they identify in all a little more than 2,500. So there's a big discrepancy between all those areas. And why it's important to get the true count is because once you have that data, then you're going to be able to go to the federal areas, to the federal Congress, and ask for more money based on that statistical data that's there. And so we speak up on behalf of the whole Morongo Basin as far as bringing those issues to light. Because there is a need here in the Morongo Basin to have the homelessness served, the veterans, all those that are involved, to make sure that they're not forgotten about and that your community is not forgotten about. So I think we're doing a good job at moving that forward. We just need that statistical data. And those that are out here tonight involved with nonprofits, if you could get the word out that the point in time count in January is so important to this region that we need to get a true count. Make sure that we are counting all those that are out there so we could go out there and advocate on your behalf to create some of the homelessness services that are so drastically needed here in this area. Also, just recently, the Board of Supervisors looked at ways how we could actually start to look at some of the values that are there and to really honor those in elders in our community. And so Proposition 90 came before the board, and what that is a tax incentive for those that are seniors, that they're able now to move from an area, come in, and stay at the base tax of where they were. So that if they come in and they're at a house that was maybe $150,000, now they're purchasing a new home at $250,000, it's the old base tax, the $150,000, that follows them now to the area. So that it keeps that moving forward. And the Board of Supervisors approved that. Also, Pioneer Water, I mean, that's a big issue, and we're still working hard on that, so much so that we had a meeting last week where we're tying up some of the documents on it so that that project starts to move forward. So if you hear that there's been a change in getting water to Pioneer Town, there hasn't been no change. It's coming. But the documentation and all that has to take place is still being worked on, and our office is really aggressively going after that to make sure that those documents are fulfilled. So it's our goal by the end of the year to have all those documents done so you can start to move forward on getting the bids out there for that project. Which ties into roads and different things that are here. Certainly, the last couple meetings we had issues. There was a vote that was taken on Wander Valley for roads that were moving forward. And originally we held it up because we wanted to make sure that the right people were approving the areas that needed to be approved by the registered voters or the property owners. And so when it came out that it really was what needed constitutionally, it had to be the voters, the registered voters that approved it, and they did. I went ahead and did vote for it to move that forward so we could get some roads out in Wander Valley. But also, because of the confusion that was there, we actually gave the charge to the CEO to create a policy so that there is no more confusion over that it's not up to the director and the director heads, that there's a law that has to be followed, and we're going to see that amendment come forward before the Board of Supervisors as a policy that's going to make it clear once and for all when it first comes to the Board of Supervisors. So protecting the area and the character of the whole Morongo Basin is something that we're really adamantly involved in, making sure that we're advocating for those things. Areas protecting the character of Joshua Tree. We got funding available now for different beautifications in downtown Joshua Tree. So we're moving forward. And some say that, the general plan that's being looked at, and we're going to put the community benefit plan together, and some are saying that the voice might be left out of the people here. But it's the people that drive the voice that's out there. It's the people that truly understands what's needed here in this community. So it's the people's voice that is going to be heard throughout those community benefit plans that we're going to update. The general plan is going to be updated. Certainly, we like to think that we did a great job at the solar ordinance position, but we did as best we can. Certainly, we couldn't get 100% of the stuff in there, but we got 80%, and it was tested. And so you've seen the will, the majority of the board, to stand behind that ordinance and looking at that and preserving the beauty that's here in the gateway communities. But also certainly working with land use, looking at some of the areas that need to be worked on. Public Works is another one that we're constantly out here working on those areas that are there. The sheriff's team has put together a team called Hope that goes out there and is really proactive in engaging with the homeless that are actually in San Bernardino County. And the Morongo Basin is a big area that we were actually out here with the Hope team that comes out and gets the services to the homeless people if they want those services, as far as being able to where you could get a shower, where you could get emergency housing, where you could do some of these different things, a shelter. Getting that information out to them. So you're seeing a big cultural change within San Bernardino County itself as far as being more proactive to the situations that are there rather than reactive to those areas that are there. So these are just some of the areas that we're working on. Certainly we had the flooding issue that came through and we advocated to try to make it an emergency declaration, but there was thresholds that had to be met. 800 homes which is ironic, 800 homes had to be destroyed, and a level of monetary damage had to be done. And if the same area would have been destroyed out in the middle of the population areas of San Bernardino City, Redlands, Highland, you would see that being done. But because the properties are farther apart, that there's a problem with that. And we're going to sit down and we're going to discuss how we could actually start to look at these areas that are being declared emergencies, not based on the damage, but based on the actual parcel sizes that's there. So it's not that one size fits all. There has to be openness to make sure that everybody is treated fairly in those areas. So we did come out and look at some of those areas and the damage that was done, and with Public Works continuing to clean up some of that mess that was there. But those are some of the things that we've actually been working on. There's a lot more that we've been actually working on too with the County Board of Supervisors. But these are specific areas that I believe are honed in right here into the Morongo Basin area. And certainly the Mac, and I've seen in the paper they're calling it the Big Mac. And so we'll probably stop and get one on the way home. But they've been great at bringing the issues to our office, and having Mike Lipsitz as the chair has a direct communication to our office. And at first, when I did that and made him as my field rep, and he's the chair of the MAC organization, I think it benefits the community because we're directly engaged with one another. So the issues that are being brought up are directly given to our office on a daily basis. So those are some of the things that we've been working on, and I know I think are we gonna do questions, or are we gonna? We might have time for a few.
Can I say that
And how many would you like to answer tonight? We can limit it. Phil? 10? Pardon?
We got time for some questions.
Okay, rather than have you with your questions come up to the podium, I'm going to walk around and hand you the microphone. It'll be a time saver. And who would like to go first?
I want to say something, just if I may, before the first question, and that is, when Supervisor Ramos was running for office, and he'd go out to these community meetings, and someone would say, well, what is your position on this or position on that? He would say, I want what the people want. And that was great, but after a time I started getting a little nervous, thinking, I'm going to have to pin him down at some point. Well, what I forgot, and I think what a lot of people forgot, is that when we ask a politician what is their position on this or that, we often think in the back of our mind, who's behind them writing the checks? What is the position of the people who are funding your campaign? And what I wasn't realizing is that there wasn't anyone standing behind the supervisor writing checks, that he really did want what the people wanted. And I mean, that is what our representatives are to do, is to go there and represent what the communities want. And that's exactly what he's done. On every issue that's come up, the supervisor or someone from staff gets in touch with us and says, well, what does the MAC want? What does the community want? And that is how the vote comes down at the Board of Supervisors. And I've been really proud to see things work out like that, and to know that he really did want what the community wants. And I was trying to change my way of thinking when when a politician says that, I know it can be sincere, and so I'm really, really proud to be involved and to see that going on. So thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and start, and I'm going to take the first question. We have several residents here that are very interested in what actually you saw during the flood event we had this month, and what exactly the county is doing to organize some kind of relief in that area. Maybe a little bit more detail than what we've had from the county. I know we've got some people here that are very interested in that.
Yeah.
I can give some specifics on that.
This controls
because,
it.
After the flood of September
No, it
16th, it took a few days to realize how bad things were, because it was sort of a narrow swath where a lot of damage occurred. It rained for an hour, more than 2 inches fell in a narrow area, and it was a narrow swath, came right down from the mountains through Joshua Tree. And of course, the folks there, who lives on the side of a mountain in the desert thinking they need flood insurance? Not too many people, and so consequently no one, I don't think anyone that I've heard from since had flood insurance in that area. And a lot of damage was occurred. There was one fatality, one child was nearly killed, and one or maybe one home was lost in several structures. So I toured the area with the supervisor and the head of public works, and we looked at what Department of Public Works has been doing. Most of the response emanates from the yard here on Highway 62. You pass just after Sunburst, heading east. And those folks who normally work an extended day from early in the morning till later in the day, they work 4 days. So they were out there 6 days a week, and they're still out there. They're still making changes. They started with the highway, and then they dug that giant culvert that you see from going from the highway near Sunset, I think the road is, or across from Halley Road on the highway to channel the mud and the water down. That took a lot of resources. And then they went on the primary roads and then the secondary roads, and now they're down to up like on Vista Drive, trying to grade the road so that the slant of the road, I don't know the terms, but they're trying to encourage water to go where they need it to go. There are also lots of washes in the area. Our office, like the office here in this building, got a lot of phone calls. Well, who are the counties responsible for maintaining the washes? Well, nobody really maintains a lot of the washes. There are too many washes around, and you don't know where things are going to come. It hasn't rained. The drought has been going on for so long. A lot of dry debris built up in these washes, and over time it created berms, and homeowners also created their own berms. And when you get a rain like that a quantity of water coming down in the mountains so quickly, the county can predict that that's going to happen or know where it's going to occur and account for every contingency. So water came down, there was a lot of destruction, a lot of property damage, and there are people still suffering, we know. So Department of Public Works is out there now trying to clear those washes. This is an opportunity to get in there and do that, and they're making a lot of progress. If you haven't, if you need help, and you lived on a county-maintained road and you haven't received it, call my office, get my card after the meeting, and we'll work with the Department of Public Works to get somebody over there, unless you live on an unmaintained road. And that's a sticking point. A lot of people who lived on unmaintained roads didn't realize that distinction. No help is coming. You know by now. The folks on that area could consider banding together and creating a special district, which would then you'd have an assessment or a tax, we're not sure which, would be on your property taxes, and that would be pooled, and county would provide services. But it's based on communities who get together and vote this sort of district into existence and tax themselves. We are now have been able to secure some help from the Marine base and through Reach Out Morongo, through Reach Out 29 Palms. Robin Schlosser over there is either getting people over there today or tomorrow, young people with shovels. And I think we're down to that area. And also, there have been donated building materials, so we finally have some materials left to help people who need replacement drywall and it's on a property by property, see what people need. Of course, interiors take precedence over people who lost landscaping. But let us know what you need. It has been, it was a learning curve for all of us to find out what was out there, how much damage, who needed help. And so we're responding as quickly as we can. But without the supervisor's messages to Public Works and his presence over there, I don't think we would have seen the same quick response. So that did help a lot. We appreciated it.
Some of the areas, and echoing on top of what Mike Lipsitz is saying, but we actually came out and looked at some of the culverts that got plugged up and are actually under, they were under dirt at the time when we were there. Hopefully they're cleared up by now. But asking the questions as far as how wide the culverts were they able to handle the water and all those things that were coming through? Certainly the loss of life, we all share the sorrow in that. And also with the baby that was swept away but was found. I mean, I think that was a miracle that was there, and I think that in itself deserves a round of applause there for that life being able to live through there. If you're asking me to talk a little bit more on potential litigation or anything of that sort, it's more of a process that has to be followed before we actually start to talk about any of that stuff that's there. But when I did come out, I seen some of the culverts that were buried, and so I asked them that when they actually got cleared, I'm going to come back out and look at them and see if there's any reassessing of the width or any of that the water that comes through during that time, the 100-year flood or the 10-year. Now we don't even know. Water, the weather's just crazy, and it just drops a lot of water during this time. I mean, we're in a drought here in California, so the weather system is truly changing, I believe. So all those things that we've seen how the question was, what did we actually see when we came out? Some of those were actually the culverts that were there, where one came through and then also channeled out into two different areas. And then seeing how the flow came, but when it hit a certain area, it just kind of went all the way out. And it's just a wide area that was affected, which really got me concerned as far as being able, not to be able to declare it an emergency area, but people truly don't understand within San Bernardino County and others that out in certain areas, you got people that live farther apart, 2 miles, 2 acres apart, where in the cities, they're right next to each other, so you're going to have a bigger impact right away. And so we're going to be advocating to make sure that if there's a possibility to change some of the requirements that fit the actual communities within San Bernardino County, because we don't believe in the one-size-fits-all. That if it's in the middle of areas that are just everybody's close to each other, you're going to have more damage. But in the areas that like here, there should be some understanding of how far apart the homes are and how that the damage and that threshold should be a little bit lessened based on that. So we're going to be looking at that and bringing up our concerns. Not so sure that we'll be successful, but we're going to be advocating for it. So those are some of the things that we've seen, and we're going to be coming back out once it's cleaned up so we can look at those culverts and to make sure that, and look at the documentation that they're giving us to make sure that they were sized right in the first place. So.
That's great. Thank you for the follow-up. Next.
I'm wondering is there going to be an overall civil engineer, like a big eye view of what's going on? Because it's clear when you look at Google Earth, the washes, water runs downhill. There's been houses built in some of the blue line streams. And we definitely need some sort of overall civil engineering, kind of case-by-case basis. But clearly at the Sunny Vista wash where the fellow died, there needs to be a bridge or something there. Sorry. I'm at the school, so a lot of people are really affected at the school. So anyway, so there needs to be some sort of bridge or something at that Sunny Vista wash. The problem is you could not physically see that wall coming at you until it was there. If he was making that decision, he was already in there, but, it was too late at that point because he was already stuck, but he could have gone through and could have hit him like that. I almost lost a friend and 2 children on Altaloma with that wash that goes across the road. Mm-hmm. She luckily looked right, and honestly, I drive that road all the time. I did not know the wash crossed the road there. There's no sign, no nothing. So thank God she looked right. She stopped. Wall of mud's probably the same wall of mud that got the guy. I don't know. She stopped in time, though, so she's alive and her kids are alive. But I don't know why that wash goes over Altaloma. All the school buses were leaving. All the parents were leaving with kids. It was like absolutely the worst possible time for that to happen. So we're incredibly lucky more people did not die. So simple. It's got to be an overall view. You've got to look at what's going on with the washes. You've got to look at what's going on with the roads, the elevations. Above us, we have a road coming down from the mountain. It goes up into the mountains, and the berm above us broke. The road above us, and it was very obvious when the berm broke. So luckily we were okay. But anyway, there you go. Thank you, sir.
No, and exactly those comments that you're bringing up are comments that we'll be bringing up to Public Works once we come back out and look at the whole area. And if the answer is going to be no, it does serve its purpose. We want the documentation. Give us the documentation of how you reach that conclusion. So we're going to be asking a lot of those questions.
But even simply a sign like flashing across the
certainly.
We went, we looked, you could see how high that water went on that tree. It was like
I seen it.
high.
Yeah.
And there's no sign there, so thank God she looked to the right.
Certainly.
She turned left and got stuck when it went over on Sunny Hill. So that whole section there is just a mess.
No, we'll be asking those questions.
Thank you, sir. My name is Celeste Doyle. I'm a Joshua Tree resident, a business owner, and a property owner. And regarding all of this, that was an uncommon event. And people need to be aware of the flash flood possibilities and all of that. But this brings up the issue of the Altamira proposal, gated community.
Oh, yeah.
200 some, I forget how many homes they're proposing, but it's a quarter-acre density gated community in the area that was impacted by this flash flood. It is an unusual event, but not unheard of. This isn't the first time it happened, and it's not going to be the last. It's near the park, lots of issues with that. I just want to say that a lot of the problems that came out of that event were because of the development that has occurred and the policies of the county regarding development and road issues, and also Caltrans on the highway. And we really need help from the county regarding Caltrans. They're the 800-pound gorilla in the room. They're not very cooperative. We need some help with stormwater runoff, obviously. We need some help with traffic calming measures on the highway through Joshua Tree. We've asked for it a long time ago when you guys adopted, and I'm saying you guys, I know you weren't on the Board of Supervisors at the time, but the community plan was adopted, and we were assured it would be respected and it would be implemented, and it has not. And some of the things that were called for included traffic calming measures on the highway and pedestrian safety measures so that they could get across the highway. Our commercial district is centered on the highway. That's just the way it is. It's not anybody's fault. It's just the way it is. But we need to work with that. And we need your help, and we need the rest of the supervisors' help. But more importantly, we need your staff's help. And that seems to be where the rub is. They, especially in the planning and the land use departments, disregard, are dismissive of, and dispute the relevancy of our community plan. And we find that very frustrating. We worked long and hard with county staff to develop that plan, and the Board of Supervisors adopted unanimously, and we were assured that it would be applied. And people in this room and people in this community have invested money and time and sweat in reliance on that plan. It's an economic plan for our future. And it's everything that you said when you came here at the beginning about how unique this place is and what a attraction it is. And it is an attraction because it is unique. People don't go to Yucca Valley. People don't go to 29 Palms as much as they go to this town to stay. when they visit the park. If you look at the statistics for the national park, you will see that more people enter the park through Joshua Tree than they do through any other entrance. And it's because of what this community is and what we have built. And we are working, hopefully, with the county to make it better and to make it more prominent and to make it more productive and to make it help everybody. But again, the rub seems to be with the county staff.
So Les, there's a lot of people here. If we,
Thank you. Sorry.
But it does, you know, bringing out the other supervisors into the area so that they could see for themselves, I mean, has worked wonders. Certainly, Janice Rutherford, Supervisor Rutherford, and Supervisor Gonzalez, and Supervisor Lovinggood, myself, we've all been here and seen the area, and we all agree that it needs to be preserved and to find that balance that's there. So that was the biggest battle of getting the other supervisors out to see it, because for some supervisors, their whole area is municipalities, cities, and it's already built out. And so to let them truly understand that San Bernardino County still has areas that we need to preserve if we want our kids to be able to truly understand the beauty that San Bernardino County, not historically, but presently has today for the educational process. And I'm big on education too, so we're working hard to make sure we have that preservation and that balance that's there.
I'm Judy Coral-Arono. I'll be short and sweet. You mentioned that there was a 3-2 vote on the Apple Valley item when it was appealed. Who were the two supervisors that didn't vote with you?
No, I don't remember at this time. No, I'm just kidding. I remember well. It was those that were in favor was myself, Supervisor Lovinggood, and Supervisor Gonzalez.
Ed Valerian, Desert Heights. Is the solar ordinance a living document? Is it going to be modified? I come from snow country where they put up snow fences to protect the highways, and these solar fields compress, have a Bernoulli effect, and they compress and increase the speed of the wind blowing the dust and the sand out in the morning, mornings and nights, and it's really bad around them. If they were forced to put slats, like privacy slats, those chain link fences, they would hold a bunch of that blowing sand in their own compound, and they'd be forced to remove it, or force them to remove it on a periodic basis. But, these things are causing sandstorms around them. And I don't know, will the solar ordinance be periodically reviewed for upgrades to potentially have something like that added to it?
Certainly the opportunity is there always for feedback and to make an ordinance better. The process right now is that you would you apply for your permit to move forward. It goes before the Planning Commission. The 32 conditions that we put together is what we've given to the Planning Commissioners to look through and do their best judgment, where mitigation actually takes place within those areas. I know there was a project out in Hallandale that took place, and they actually put some of those slats and some of those things in there. So the process is working. It's going through the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission takes those 32 conditions that were there and finds sometimes mitigation that's there to make the project more compliable with the county ordinance itself. And sometimes the Planning Commission votes to deny a project, right? And so I think the process is there. It's working its way out, but I think it's done a good process. And I think the Planning Commissioners have done a great job at making sure the voice of here in the Morongo Basin and the Gateway communities is being heard in those areas that are there.
Okay, we're going to take 3 more questions.
Hi, Supervisor Ramos. Thank you so much for being here, and I appreciate your attempts at being proactive, and I think that's really terrific. However, we are in a really reactive situation regarding flood control, and I would like to state that the wash that took out that baby and that house, which is now a tear down, the Public Works people have channeled that right onto Route 62. That's where it's going next flood. They made a nice, deep, wonderful channel, which would have saved the home had they done that the day before, and that baby, and that man, but reactive, okay. So now we have a very deep channel. Please follow the channel, see where it goes, right onto Route 62. If that house was not in the way, the baby, the mattress, the washing machine, and everything else would have been in the middle of Route 62. It's just that the house stopped it. And now that house is destroyed. So are we going to wait until there's more destruction and people die? If that wall of water hits the highway, who's ever driving by is going to be taken out. And it's never one car at a time anymore. It's like an egregiously dangerous situation, and I'm aghast every time I pass that. That's an entire flood channel right now, a big swath of 62. And that needs to be spoken to immediately. A, and B, it's really hard for me and the rest of the taxpayers to think that no one maintains the wash. We're living in a community that's considering further development, and we have no flood control, no abatement of flash flooding. That's ridiculous. And we're talking about a gated community. We don't even have an infrastructure to take care of a very huge and deadly problem. And how is it that nobody maintains? If you look at a FEMA map, all the problem areas are clearly delineated ever since 1978. So if they're delineated by FEMA, why don't we act on it? We pay taxes. What's more important? There's health, there's education, and there's safety. Those are primary issues. Thank you.
Thank you. And certainly those are some of the questions that we're asking about also. And so we keep bringing up the gated community and some of those developments that are being proposed out in the area. So we're keeping an eye on all those areas. And when we did come out, I did look at the area where that's being proposed at, right next to the school that's there. So we're keeping an eye on those things. And unfortunately, now we're engaged with Public Works and to come out and reassess a lot of the different criteria that they have and to maybe challenge them on some of the areas that are there. So
I will follow up with yes, we all are aware of where you're talking about the water, the culvert leads to the highway. I'll follow up with your news media here and let them know. We'll send out a press release. What's the plan?
Between now and then.
Yes, hi, Mr. Ramos, welcome. I am Margot Sturgis. I live in Yucca Valley. I do have properties in Joshua Tree. That's why I'm here and I'm concerned. But I wanted to also add to the notes that you're taking about the flood control and the flood channel. Please, please, please urge everybody on the San Bernardino County Board of Supervisors to hand over the flood channels to the town of Yucca Valley. They say that, oh, we can't touch them because they belong to the county. And somewhere along the line, when they incorporated, the county did not give them outright the flood channels. So if you could follow up on that and let the town of Yucca Valley be responsible for the flood channels so we can address those problems as well. And it's off your hands. And thank you and happy anniversary.
Oh, thank you.
Last question.
Lucky me. Tom O'Key, Joshua Tree. I just want to follow up on your statements about dark skies. We had a group called MBDSA, Morongo Basin Dark Skies Alliance. A bunch of citizens met 21 months. Put a lot of time in writing a new document, the idea that we would have a night sky ordinance, and I was wondering if you're going to be pushing to help us complete that work.
Certainly, we're already in discussion on that as far as pushing it through. The whole general plan amendments are taking place, and that's one of the ones that we're actually aggressively pushing to make sure that we ensure the dark skies, not only here, but everywhere, that we need to actually protect it in San Bernardino County. So thank you for bringing that issue to our attention. All right. Well, thank you again for having me out, and hopefully we answer your questions, and we got a lot of comments to take back. Thank you.
Thank you two so much. Appreciate you coming out on your anniversary. And we'll move on with our agenda. I think you're off duty. Thanks again. Okay. Okay, can we, if we'll move on, thank you. We skipped something, and that was approval of the minutes from the last meeting. That's, so that's item number E, letter E. Okay, we have a motion that we accept the minutes. Any changes to the minutes? Okay, all in favor say aye. Okay, any opposed? The minutes of last meeting are as stands. Okay, and that brings us to, I'd like to move that we forgo public comments until a little later in the meeting, because I know that the community development folks are going to want to hear from all of us. If we could move on to public safety reports in the interest of time, we will offer the public some time to get up and say what's on their mind. I see Joan Griffin moving toward the microphone. Thanks, Joan. And Eric Robles, are you going to speak too? Okay, Joan from CHP. Oh.
Not that I need it, I got a big enough mouth, right? First of all, I just want to say that there's a Halloween coming up, and it's on a Friday night, and there's going to be a lot of kids out, some of them doing things that are not appropriate, but we need to keep an eye out for them. So if you're out in your cars, anticipate that there's going to be a kid running in front of you at any moment. If you're out trick-or-treating with your kids, this is a great time to teach them how to be good pedestrians. So that's the first thing. Second thing, I have a Start Smart class that I hold every month. I'm having a class tomorrow night, and I have a lot of slots available. If there's a parent here that needs something to do with their 14 to 18-year-old, that's free, educational, and could save their life, please call the Highway Patrol Station tomorrow and get signed up. The class is from 6 to 8 tomorrow night, and it's a lot of fun for me. I enjoy teaching my class. So does anyone have any questions for me tonight? Yes, sir. Where's it located at? At the Highway Patrol Station. And if you want to come, I'll sign you up as soon as I'm done talking. All right. Anyone else? You're going to let me off scot-free? Awesome. Okay.
Thank you, Joan. And next we have Captain Monday from Morongo Basin Sheriff's Department. Thanks for coming.
I was going to bore you with some statistical information, but for the sake of time, I would like to kind of piggyback on what Joan talked about with the kids being out. The Sheriff's Department last week worked 2 fatal traffic collisions involving pedestrians. One in 29 Palms, one in Yucca Valley. So I would beg you that if you are going to try to cross that highway, that you make sure you do it at a traffic light and a crosswalk. And if you're going to be out walking in the evenings, make sure the best thing would be to actually wear some sort of reflective vest or coat, something that is, put a pinstripe down your pants if you have to, so that traffic can see you. And without going into too much of a science explanation, it's winter time or fall and getting ready to go to winter, and so the earth is tilting on its axis, and the sun is actually in a different place in the sky than it has been in the summer. And if you are driving in the morning eastbound and in the evening westbound, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And actually the day in Yucca Valley that we had the fatal accident, I could barely see. I actually had to slow way down so that I could see the street that I turn on every day to get home because the sun was so bad that I could not see it. So I beg you again to drive safely. If you can't see very well, slow down. If you know that there is a stoplight coming or a traffic control light coming up and you can't tell whether it's red, green, or yellow, slow down until you can. That will hopefully save your lives and save somebody else's life that it actually is, you know, crossing the street properly. So please just drive careful, slow down. It will be okay. You will still get where you're going. And unless anybody has any questions for me. Yes, ma'am.
Yesterday, I passed an accident on Old Woman Springs Road where the car, it looked like if there was anybody in the car, it had any fatalities. Are you aware of that accident? The car was upside down and smashed.
They had no crashes yesterday. Where was this at? I mean,
Old Woman Springs Road.
yep. Before Buena Vista, that would have been us. Yeah, I am not aware of, I don't recall seeing on my log I know we didn't have any fatal accidents yesterday, or even a major accident even out there. Well, hopefully, maybe they were wearing their seat belts because, yeah, we didn't get anything on that. Yes, ma'am.
Is there signs coming out at 247 where Pipes Canyon hits that there's going to be construction there? Is it going to be highway construction?
That one would be Joan, so I'll let her answer that.
Caltrans is going to be doing some construction on 247.
Are they widening the road?
I'm not exactly sure. That's what I've heard.
Paving is shoulders, there's been meetings going on for 4 years about this.
So what you said? We have guys out there with the Caltrans workers. I'm not 100%, but he's the paving, what they're doing.
Yes, ma'am.
I spoke to an incident last month here. I don't think you were here, but the sheriff's department. It was a 911 call because I felt threatened, and I have been threatened to be built by this person and followed me. I called 911 and gave my location, and they told me that the sheriff's department had picked up the call because it went to Barstow, I found out, from the cell phone. And nobody showed up. I waited in the dark for 1 hour, and then on the phone, I got a call from the sheriff's department saying we couldn't find you. And I'm now trying to get the documentation of that call. I got something in writing verifying that there was a call, but no details of the conversation. I also requested to have the auditory tape of this call and the response. And what I got back for $5 doesn't give me anything. It just says who is taking this recording and making a copy of it, and then there's no story there. So I would like for someone to please follow up on this because it's very important for me to have a document because this guy is still out there, and I want to be prepared to demonstrate that this is not the first time.
Okay, unless there is a similar incident to yours, I believe that we have spoken, and I could have swore that I followed up on that and explained why, and I won't waste too much time, but explained where the confusion lied. But come see me tomorrow or call me and we can work on that. I may not be able to do anything with the recordings, but I know that if this is the same thing that I'm thinking of, I know exactly what happened. And I spoke with somebody, and I swear I thought it was you, but maybe it wasn't. So we will...
That's what I heard last time. I don't think it was you. And there was never any
you my business card, you call me, and I will get you an answer. Anyone else?
Okay, we'll move on. Thank you, Captain Mondari. Moving right along. Tonight we have some folks from working with HUD and who are charged with taking the pulse of the community on housing, various aspects of housing, and identifying needs and other infrastructure in the area, and that will translate often in the future into go into decision making for how much funds come back to this area from HUD and in the form of community block grants. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to hand it over to Jeremy Gray, who came all the way here from Georgia, and Shauna Mason, also from Georgia, to speak to us. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us. My name is Jeremy Gray with WFN Consulting. Shauna Mason is back here, and she's going to be taking some notes perhaps as we talk. We are here, we're consultants to the county's Office of Community Development and Housing. That office manages funds that the county receives through HUD, namely the Community Development Block Grant, and then also a couple of other grant programs as well. Every 5 years, the county has to submit a plan to HUD that explains what they believe are the priorities for how those funds are expended in the community. And our position, our job is to help the county in identifying what those needs are and then preparing that 5-year plan. That plan is called a consolidated plan, and then every one of the 5 years within that plan, there's something called an annual action plan that gets a lot more specific about this particular year, this amount of funds that's going to be spent, provided to organizations X, Y, and Z who will do specific things. So that's the action plan, gets specific. And then there's a third document too called an analysis of impediments to fair housing choice, which kind of goes together with those others, but it is exactly what the name is. It's a look at any barriers to fair housing in the county, anything that might bar someone's equal opportunity to access housing choices of his or her choice. So those are the three things. I want to share briefly with you kind of a little bit more about these documents, what they are, and then I will have a question or two for you. I think we will have a few minutes for some questions with you. When you came in the door at the table there were a few documents that I want to point out to you too. So there's a handout that you are welcome to take with you just for your information as you leave about the Fair Housing Act. It has a little quiz on it. There's questions, or the answers to those quiz questions are found on the reverse at the very bottom. So if you get stumped by one, the answers are there. But that's just kind of an informational document for you about what fair housing is. Also over there is a flyer that lists several different meetings. This is the first of several meetings that we will be having throughout the county over the next few weeks. So if you are here tonight and you hear something in the presentation and think of a neighbor who would be really interested and you're sorry that they weren't here, there are other meetings that that neighbor could attend. So take a flyer with you if you'd like to share this information with anyone else. Also on that flyer, there's a link to a survey, and I'll talk more about the survey as we go through this presentation here. But our opportunity to share tonight is somewhat limited just because your time is limited and you're here to hear about a variety of different things, not just this item. So while I do want to get some initial input from you, I do also want you to know that this is not the only opportunity that you have to provide input to us regarding what you believe are the needs in the county. So the survey is one. A link to the online version of the survey is on that flyer over there. If you need a hard copy of the survey, come see me. And we can figure out how to get one of those to you as well. So the consolidated plan, I like to refer to it as an application to HUD for the grant funds that the county receives under the various programs. The county is an entitlement jurisdiction, which means just by virtue of its population and housing characteristics, etc., that the county will receive a certain amount of fund, and that's determined by a formula that HUD and Congress approve. However, HUD's not going to send those funds to the county without knowing what the county's plans are for those funds. So in that sense, the consolidated plan is an application for funds. And you see there listed the 3 grant programs we're talking about. community development block grants, home investment partnerships, which is an affordable housing program, and the Emergency Solutions Grant, which is a homelessness grant program. The next slide lists the eligible activities that you can fund, that the county can fund using its CDBG program. CDBG is pretty broad. There's a lot of things that you can do with it. It spans the range from economic development activities, job creation, programs for entrepreneurs, to public improvements, facilities, like the facility that we are meeting in tonight can be funded with CDBG funds, playgrounds, parks. Housing can be rehabilitated, homeowner housing, or even rental housing, and public services. You can fund the salaries of people who are doing case management for nonprofits or things like that as well. So just a sample of some of the things that you can do with the CDBG funds. The next slide talks about some of the activities that are eligible using home funds. Like I said, this is the Affordable Housing Grant. And the eligible activities fall into three different categories. Homeowner activities, so things like rehabilitation of homes, repair, reconstruction. Home buyer activities to assist people who are purchasing a home, which could be things like down payment assistance, or also production of new housing units that are available for sale at an affordable price. And then rental housing programs. So it could include the acquisition of units, the construction of new rental units, and then also programs that help provide subsidy for people who might rent those units. So those are all eligible activities under the home program. And then finally, the Emergency Solutions Grant. There's quite a few different things that you can do with that fund source. These all have to do with homelessness and homelessness prevention. So street outreach to those who are homeless to help better connect them with services that are available in the community. The construction and really operation of shelter space. Short-term rent and utility payments that keep someone from becoming homeless. They might be right there on the brink, and if they can't make this month's rent payment, they're going to be out of a place and out on the street. So if it can keep somebody from becoming homeless, those things would be eligible. And then if someone has recently become homeless, there are line items within this grant that you can use to rapidly rehouse them, is kind of the terminology of the grant. The thinking there that the longer that they go homeless and on the street, the harder it is to eventually get them back into housing. So if that can happen quickly, that's prioritized here. The last thing there just has to do with data collection. There's some specific data, and I noticed that the supervisor who is here referred to it as well. This program, the ESG program, has very specific sorts of data that's collected on homelessness and the homeless population. And to the extent that that happens under this grant program, those data collection opportunities can be funded with these grant funds. So then moving on to talk about the fair housing aspect of our work. This document, called An Analysis of Impediments to Fair Housing Choice, is a document that's required of any grantee that receives the CDBG funds. So in order for the county to receive a penny under the program, it has to prepare and submit this analysis to HUD. You see there in bold in the middle of that slide kind of a brief summary of the Fair Housing Act of '68. Protects a person's right to own, sell, purchase, or rent housing of his or her choice without fear of unlawful discrimination. Discrimination can happen in several different dimensions. We call them protected classes, your race, your color, and I may not hit all of them here, but your ethnicity, your national origin, your religion, your gender, your disability status. All of those things are protected by federal law, so you cannot be discriminated against based on your membership in any of those protected classes. And there's the list. Fair housing choice, then. Choice is really the key word here. The ability of persons' income being equal. So if you earn the same income as someone else who may be different from you in that they have a disability and you don't, they may be white and you may be Hispanic, they may have children and you do not. Does that limit the housing choices that are available to you? So choice is kind of the operative word here when we're talking about fair housing. An impediment to fair housing choice, then. It can be an active thing. It can also be an omission, a decision. It can be a direct thing, something that actually restricts the availability of housing choices, but it can also be a passive sort of thing. It might not have been the intent of this action or decision to restrict someone's housing choice, but it actually has that effect. That can be considered discriminatory and an impediment to fair housing, presuming that it happens along one of these lines of protected classes. So just in the course of our work for the county, what's next? October and November is when we will be out in the community. We'll be talking to people. We have got several interviews, and we'll be doing some of those by phone from our offices in Atlanta. But the next few months are all about understanding the community and what the needs are in the community. And so that's why you see us here, and that's why you're going to see a list of meetings throughout the next couple of months scattered all across the county. There's a lot of ways that input is coming to us. And then by January, we will have developed kind of a synthesis that pulls together all of these needs. And so we will have identified what we believe are the priorities for the funding that the county receives, and also what we believe might be barriers to fair housing choice within the county. In February and March, you will see the reports be published for public comment. So there will be draft reports, and they will be available on the county's website. And there's more information about that on the flyer. If it's not, come see me. But that will come out as well. But there'll be a public notice that goes, it's published in your newspapers, and press releases will go out to advertise that. But you can stay tuned. In February and March, that the draft documents will be posted, and we will invite you to come back, take another look at them, and say, yeah, we think you got it right, or no, we think you missed the point, and there's some things that are missing from these documents. That's the kind of feedback that we will want to hear. And then finally in May, the documents will be finalized and submitted to HUD, and then that opens things up for the next 5-year funding cycle. So you see there also the link to the survey. It looks longer than it is. It's not too hard to remember. SurveyMonkey.com. There's that funny /s/ and then San Bernardino County. So if you visit that website, it'll take you to the survey. If English is not your native language and you prefer to take the survey in Spanish, you can take the same survey in Spanish from that link. You'll just follow a secondary link, and it takes you there. So any questions about the documents before I ask you a few questions that will help us kind of begin the process of identifying community needs? But just questions in general about who we are or what we're doing, what these documents are? Yes.
What kind of volume is this kind of document talking about? Readability.
The documents can be large. They'll probably end up between 100 and 200 pages. There's an executive summary that we prepare for the documents, though. And sometimes we condense that even further into just a one-page front-back handout that's kind of easily accessible.
Okay, and then being that it's a big county, is there any divisional, is there any subset of county that you look at?
Sure. Yeah, great question. A lot of the data that we look at it based on census tract level. Some of it we might look at based on municipalities. So whenever we can look at it and break it down into pieces, we certainly do that. And in a county like this, you kind of have to.
So I know your survey did ask for zip code, and then it asked where you work for a zip code.
Right.
So does it really hone down in on those zip codes or those areas to identify specific problems or data gaps?
Sure. Yeah. So great point. You've taken the survey, I guess. Good. The survey does ask for zip codes in a couple of different places, and that does allow us to say that people living in this zip code had this need, and we can kind of break that down and say, well, the needs were very different in this other zip code. So yes, we can get that sort of information based on that. Sure. Yes.
I'm wondering if there's any information that's been put in the libraries, which is, of course, a place where people can use the computer.
Debbie, do you know the...
Yeah, I believe that we did send out flyers to all of the libraries throughout the county so that they could put it on their link and also have hard copies.
A couple more right here.
I'm president of a little local community association around here. We're nonprofit, total volunteers, just on donations. We've been recipients of, I'm not sure, a half a dozen block grants over the years, which has been fantastic. That was a good part. The bad part is the county's desperate for money, and I've got in my hands here about 7 back tax bills that we've received in the last 6 months for these community block grants improvements. And $3300, we don't have the money to pay in back taxes. And so you're saying there might be funds available to help us with our community center. Call Brian Anderson, come up and dealt with Brian, but he's our contact. I asked him if there's any funds to help us keep our community center afloat to pay taxes, insurance, utilities, etc.
Sure.
He said no.
Right. So Brian works with Debbie on Debbie's staff, so I'm sure that Debbie may be aware of that conversation. So that comes down to priorities for how the county allocates its funds. I know some of the municipalities within the county receive grant funds, and they allocate them. Each of the municipalities that's receiving grant funds from the county is having their own meetings to determine who they're going to provide funds to. So there are a lot of different ways that those funds get out into the community. If the county does not have funds available for those specific needs, that's something that you can talk with us about. You can share input that there needs to be funds available for those needs, and that might be a need that we would address.
You sort of alluded to that. How is the allocation process for the community funds between the incorporated areas and the unincorporated?
Yeah, let me let Debbie answer that question.
We get a gross grant amount from HUD, and the allocations are based on, it's all statistically based on population, poverty, and overcrowding. And so out of our overall grant, we apply the statistics for the cities so that they get their fair share based on the statistics, and then the balance of the grant goes to the unincorporated county for us to determine how the funds are used.
Yeah, one more here.
There's a lot of protection for people disabled. What is the protection for the landlord when they decide to get involved in this sort of thing? When they have people that will be squatters or just refuse to pay their rent, and the landlord, because of the low income kind of thing, can't afford the enormous costs to evict them. Is there any protection for landlords in this? Because I've had people just ranting about it.
So the protections that we're talking about here come from the Fair Housing Act. And so the Fair Housing Act is aimed primarily at people who are accessing housing, less so the people providing housing in terms of providing protections to those people. I would say that there are some things that the law requires landlords to do certain things. There are exemptions to the Fair Housing Act for some housing types. So some landlords could be exempt if it's a property that they live in, if it's fewer than 4 units. There's some exemptions. The Fair Housing Act, I don't think, though, I would say provides protections per se to landlords. And so it's a federal statute. So there's little that we can do about that other than talking to our congressmen and women. But here, yes.
I was looking over the report from the last survey, or the last distribution of funds. I think probably Debbie's going to answer this, and where funds went to the last time, and it seemed like in this area they were concentrated in Yucca Valley and 29 Palms, and this, our council represents the unincorporated areas, so it would be all the communities up here excluding those two. And it was a lot less, either funds weren't coming to the unincorporated areas here, or they were harder to zero in on and see how they were distributed locally. So I'm curious if by answering the survey and representing the unincorporated areas in this region, will we be able to see some funds coming back to our parts of the county?
That's a decision that would have to be made by the Board of Supervisors and the CEO, Mr. Greg Devereaux. both CDBG and home funds have been cut drastically over the last 3 years. Home funds have been cut like 60%, and the CDBG, I think, we've lost 30 or 40% of those grant funds. So obviously they've had to make some tough decisions as to what can we do that will make the largest impact in a given area. And with the unincorporated, they've taken the tactic of kind of rotating throughout the county, that they do something fairly big in one area and then they move around from year to year in order to share the funds. It just takes a while to make its way around.
I was under the impression they were giving the money to the cities, and then we were supposed to beg the cities for the money, and the cities could have really cared less about us.
Right. The cities do get an allocation out of our gross amount based on their population. They do get funding because their statistics are part of the formula allocation formula.
But they have no incentive to give to people out of their incorporated cities.
That is true, unless you are providing a service that benefits. If you can show that your services are benefiting any of their residents that might be coming to your facility.
Not a very good system.
Yeah, this happens to be a subject that's incredibly near and dear to me, the block grants. I'm Mary Helen Tuttle from Copper Mountain Mesa. Our community association center was built by HUD money back in the 80s, and each year we had been privileged to fill out documentation and get help putting in handicap parking. We have a gazebo, we got some kitchen equipment, and then we were told that we had to put in for like 20 or 30,000 at a time, and you don't really have something like that right away. And then several years ago, Brian Anderson told us that we couldn't apply to the county anymore for block grants, that we needed to go to either 29 Palms or Yucca Valley. And so my husband went with all his documentation looking to get something from Yucca Valley, and we were told that Yucca Valley was holding on to their money for their water park and that they weren't giving any money to the nonprofits. Now, there's a lot of nonprofits. There's Little League that was looking for money, and nobody was getting anything. And it's a lot of nonprofits are really hurting because they don't have any extra funds coming in, and there's no help. And the county has changed a lot of their assessments, and our property taxes have tripled. So a lot of that stuff was good for the people in these unincorporated areas. It's going to start going underground. It's just going to die because there's no funding to help us. And with the block grants, if the money that goes to these municipalities, if they said you have to give 10% to nonprofits and unincorporated areas, well, gee whiz, that's just a couple thousand. That would be great. Just a little bit. Nothing like, no, we're going to save it for a water park. Are you kidding me? I got people who are hungry and they're out in the desert with nothing, and you're going to use the money for a water park.
Thank you. Yes, and so let me take your comment and go from there, because I think what you're introducing is, kind of your concept of what a community need is, and that is more funding for nonprofits in the unincorporated county, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask the rest of you, if you were going to identify some, high priority to you, in your opinion, needs that could be met, and these could be things like public facilities, they could be public services, they could be affordable housing units or programs, homelessness programs. What are some of those things that you think rank really highly, community needs that you would like to see in the community? I saw a hand back here.
I've also filled out the survey. I hope everyone else does. We've got lots of services for the homeless. It doesn't help them they're dying because we don't have a homeless shelter. And we don't. Very early in this candidacy, James Wallace was informed we don't have a homeless shelter. He's been working hard on it since. But this is an especially harsh environment, and that should be taken into consideration.
Okay.
Also, just a few months ago, this apartment building down the street here was full of low-income seniors. They were just on the verge of being evicted out onto the streets when the operator received a federal grant. And I'm sure taxpayers are paying retail and some. We talked about money going to nonprofits. You know, Jeffrey Burham and former supervisor's chief of staff are currently under felony indictment for bribing government officials. When one of his employees was the assistant director of HUD, they were channeling all kinds of money into his nonprofit. He just built a complex over in Yucca Valley that cost taxpayers about 3 times what any private investor had to be willing to need to pay. So those really need to be scrutinized. It's non-profit firms.
Okay.
By the way, letters to the Inspector General, I think curtailed his business with that.
Okay.
We should need to look at whether non-profits actually non-profit.
Okay.
Seniors need a secure arrangement that taxpayers can afford.
Okay. Thank you. And just to remind you, Shauna is taking these comments down, so just because you don't see me writing doesn't mean we're not hearing you.
I'm concerned about the accurate data that you work with the unincorporated areas. Copper Mountain Mesa wasn't counted in the U.S. Census of 2010. The U.S. Census of 2010 counted Josh Street as 7,400 people, when we know it's about 8,700. They didn't count anything north of the landmark out here, which would be Buena Vista. Anything north of that didn't count. Anything pretty much, in fact, the entire Thunder area didn't count either. And so that is inaccurate. I don't know why they chose that. I understand that they chose it because it didn't have the density of 2,500 people per square mile.
Oh, God.
So anyway, it's got to be, the water department might have a better accuracy on who lives where and trouble.
That's why we didn't get any grant money, because we don't exist.
That is something that we can research. A lot, I'll be frank with you, a lot of the data and the analysis that we do is based on census data. There's just not, there aren't many other sources that are uniform and reliable the way census is. But I think the issue that you're raising is an important one, and we can look into that and see if there's an adjustment.
I'd be curious about, are your remedies, do you recommend new housing at times? Does your group recommend new housing?
Sure, where we hear that that's a community need, or where we look at data and observe that that's a community need, then that can be a recommendation.
Well, the U.S. Census said there's 800 empty homes in Josh Street. That's
And you would say that there's fewer? That you don't need any new housing. Okay, got you. Homeless shelter, no new housing units. Okay.
But they were trying to get work for homeless people. But homeless people need to have a place to sleep, a place to clean up, a place to eat in order to take a job. You can't just sleep under abandoned shacks or in a car and get up and go to a job. It doesn't work. So you have to start with the basics of your work.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Yes.
Now, you know, people, especially in our area, are very spread out. And I think transportation, especially for elderly people who maybe can't drive anymore, to get to some of these facilities to get help. I know in Morongo Valley, we used to have a senior lunch program. And it wasn't so much that the program wouldn't work, as that the seniors couldn't get to it because they live so far out. And I think transportation is something else that we might need in this area.
Okay, particularly for seniors, or?
Well, I would say to a degree, because you get to a point where maybe you can't drive anymore. And when you live 5 miles from someplace, it makes it really hard.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
The county does have a program that will reimburse people for driving in. The county has a program, if somebody drives you somewhere, they can be reimbursed for their gas.
Do you know the name of that program?
I don't have it on.
Link? Okay. Here, in the back here?
Yes, in 29 Palms, they received their CDBG funds and they used the Marine base as part of their population. And yet the Marine base is self-contained. They provide everything for them. So consequently, the city of 29 Palms gets credit for that population, and they get a pretty big chunk of money for CDBG funds. And I do believe that there's a need for our senior citizens. We have a lot of elderly folks that are very low income, and they do need transportation to these centers. The centers need to be open, provide shelters for them, whether it's hot or it's cold, and just meals. So I do see that as a really important factor.
Okay, thank you. And so here?
Some of the problems with the conditions of these roads is that people can't get in. You've heard about flooding Wonder Valley. There's low areas to it that the roads are, you can get bogged down to get on those roads.
Okay.
And you got the same thing out in Mesa. If you go in from Winters from Lear, you've got some pretty dicey places, and Winters is a main road that's start.
Okay.
So maybe these people aren't willing to even go out to those areas to do the surveys.
Okay, so road improvements.
The roads are really bad, and these people have issues.
Okay.
Simply because of transportation problems.
Okay, thanks. Here.
Was there, in the form of a question as well, I've seen in a couple of places, and you mentioned that there's funding available for economic development, in what way? What are examples? Is that something we definitely have a need there?
So I'll give you some examples. These are things that, not necessarily that the county currently does, but some things that are permitted with the grant. So they could be revolving loan funds for small businesses. They could be facade grants for, like a Main Street sort of business. There could be entrepreneurship training programs. There could be things like, a commercial kitchen that is funded that different entrepreneurs can share and operate a business from. Those are some things that I have seen under that category.
Right.
Sure.
More direct question would be, do you help chambers of commerce?
Provide funds to chambers of commerce? I can't think of a situation where I have seen that done. Did you have one here? Yeah.
I just wanted to also say that homelessness and the lack of a homeless shelter in this area it's been that way. I've lived here for 36 years, and it's amazing to me that I've been told the nearest services when I try to refer people is in India, is the closest services for homeless, especially considering the extremes.
Okay.
My second question would be, I'm just wondering how much the consulting firm is being paid to prepare this report for the county, and how much grant funding they anticipate will be received by the county once this report is submitted.
So, in terms of the grant funds that the county receives, do you know that estimate offhand?
Of 8 to 9 million total between all three of the programs.
And the contract that we have with the county includes one other study that's not part of this. It's an evaluation report that happens at the end of a program year. So it's these three reports plus that one. And our contract, I believe, is $88,000, something like that.
So none of the grant money is going to come to this community at all, but part of our taxes are paying for that, correct?
There's an amount.
It used to come to us, we used to get it, but we don't anymore.
Quick question, does the library get those surveys? I don't recall. We used to get very large documents, but most of it is all online now. It can be accessed online.
Yeah, it's only like 6 minutes to do it. You just fill in radio buttons. Get a survey.
Right. Let me take maybe two more comments, and then I'll let you go on with your meeting. Here?
And I'm sorry. No, go
ahead. Oh, okay.
I do remember when Yucca Valley decided to use 3 years of block grant money to go towards the playground equipment, which they did. And it was like around 2009, 2010. Was there a change in the block grant system at that time that made that allowable? I remember the block grants usually had to go, or the nonprofits were very generously handed out. And when they did, they said, "Oh, we'll fund out of our general fund," and then the people got really, and fewer people. The block grants have become slush funds for municipalities, quite frankly. And I think if anyone here hears a politician talking about block granting something back to the state, that's a red flag, because it always means that the slush fund is out there, and people who used to get the funding will get their pittance, and less people will get any at all. So was there a change in, like, say, 2009, 2010, of how block grants were, or what was allowed to be block granted or use those funds for?
In terms of the regulations for the program, no. The only change that I can think of in that time frame was a pretty dramatic decrease in funds that kind of because of the recession and everything else. I don't know if the county policy would have changed. Debbie, I saw you shaking your head, or?
Yes, the county policy changed because of the dramatic cut in the funding. We couldn't do everything that we used to do, and so they, the board of supervisors and the CEO made a decision as to what the county portion of the grant funds would be used for. Again, for the large-scale projects that they would do and move around the county. As an example, there was the sheriff's substation built in the last 2 or 3 years. That was CDBG dollars that was used to build that.
So for like the community that used 3 years of block grant money,
you can
oh, it's 118,000 each year for 3 years.
You have to keep the money moving, but there is a little bit of a lax timeline, so that yes, they can accumulate money over a period of time because they could be paying for design, they could be paying for this. So for each year, they did a phase where you ultimately ended up with your playground equipment. And that could be code enforcement as an eligible activity for CDBG.
Let me, I was just going to take one last comment here.
I have a question. Who's the watchdog for funds and how it's spent? So what I'm thinking is, if I'm looking at general plans and how they're played out, the citizenry is the watchdog for that. So the question is, when HUD money comes in, is it the citizenry that is the watchdog, and then how do they watch it?
So at the end of each year that's covered by one of these plans, there's a separate report called the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. And so at the beginning of the program year, the county puts out an action plan that says, here's what we're going to do, here's what we expect to accomplish. That plan then says, here's what actually got spent, and here's how many units of this or that were actually provided. So in that sense, in preparing that, that is sort of the report. That report does get published for public comment, so the public can review it. If they think that things don't look right with it, they could make that comment. And then that report goes to HUD. Now, I wouldn't rely on anybody at a HUD field office to be a watchdog. They have too much to do, but in theory, that's the level of oversight that they have as well.
So, but it would benefit then citizens who have needs or issues that they need to be in contact with their supervisor, whoever decides to do this, that they need to be voiced.
Yes, and the report that Jeremy's referring to, we can call it the caper. We keep that online for our office. If you want to write down our website, it's www.sbcountyadvantage.gov. And there should be an electronic version of the consolidated plan, the last of the action plan for fiscal year 14-15, and the latest caper, which would have the results of our 13-14 activities.
Thank you.
So I know that I see a couple of other hands that are popping up, but I want to let your meeting go on because I know there are other things that you want to discuss. But I do want to emphasize that this is not the only opportunity or the only way that you have to provide input to us. So the survey is one. I also have business cards on the table over there. So if you want to take one of those, you can call me, you can email me something that comes to your mind after you leave here. But yes, we are definitely interested, and over the next few months, really do want to hear from you, from your neighbors, from your colleagues about what you believe the needs are so that we can represent those in this plan. So,
Is there any possibility that changes to money's not gonna go back to the cities, and they're gonna actually go back to your office, so we don't have to go to the town and pay from the town?
I don't see that in the near future, but that's something we can certainly bring up with
I think
Supervisor
this is all a
Ramos.
waste of time, then, because we're not getting anything from the town. And this is a deep point.
When will you have your next meeting?
We have a meeting tomorrow evening in Muscoy. We have a couple of meetings on Thursday, and then we have a few in early November also.
Death Valley and 29 Palms will be holding their own meeting. Jeremy will not be conducting it, but they will have the same
Oh, really?
information.
So you can go blind to that.
You can go blind to that.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you all for your time and your input. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming. If we,
As we're going along, from what I understand from the gentleman that just spoke and from the lady from the county, as part of the MAC, we maybe need to resolve or ask for the county to change its policy on how it distributes block grant money. Because our communities, which we're representing, isn't getting any of it. And I really don't think that that's fair. And so I hope we can decide in the near future, maybe at the next meeting, to make some kind of a resolution or something and to go to the county saying that we would like to see them change their policy so that some of the unincorporated areas will get some of this money.
if you're here and you have a strong opinion on that, make yourself known to us, and we'll meet between now and the next meeting and draft a resolution to express these concerns to the county Board of Supervisors at the next meeting. So if you have some special insight, would you just like to sit on that committee, please let us know. We'd like to have you. Okay, if we could take 10 minutes for public comment outside of, in addition to what we've already heard. I have several cards, and I know some of you who filled out cards at the beginning of the meeting have already spoken, and so I'll call your name. If you already spoke on the matter of interest, just let me know. Rebecca, did you make? Okay. And Ms. Sturgis, Margot Sturgis, hi.
Hello, everybody. My name is Margot Sturgis. I'm back. I have a new hip, and I'm running for the Water District. Now, I'm a big girl, and there's a negative whisper campaign against me. I can handle that. But, you know, I don't like to see that it's coming from a council member on the dais. I think that that's really not a fair thing to do. The coalition consists of 6 members, and a member of that coalition has given me all the emails, 203 emails, that have been sent out on this whisper campaign that I am asking that the Yucca Mesa pay for the sewer project, and that's not true. That's an untruth. I did 5 years ago request that it be designated a district, YM, for planning purposes. And what can we do when we have a district for planning purposes? We can identify the area. We can put a special policy area, because right now Yucca Mesa is sitting there like a sitting duck in the county area without any protection against solar farms. And I do believe the High Desert Water District can be proactive in protecting that area, and it has to be done by identifying that area. So that was my goal. 5 years later, it's still sitting there like a sitting duck. So getting back to a MAC member endorsing the existing incumbents, it's really unfair. I don't care if she doesn't endorse me, but there's another candidate, Gina Orban. I have her cards out there. I think that that's important that all the candidates get represented, and for a MAC member to put it on her website that she's endorsing 3 incumbents, it doesn't sound right. It doesn't reflect well on all of you up here. And then I ask myself, well, why is that person doing that? Those are the same persons that made a motion and movement behind closed doors to get Dave Peach removed from the dais. So maybe she's worried that she'll get removed, and so that's why she's endorsing it. Well, you know me, I'm very outspoken, and you know me that this is my outspoken opinion and has nothing to do with anybody else. Nobody put me up here, not from the Mesa, not from Gina Oban, but I am for our community. I am for Yucca Mesa. I am for the Morongo Basin, and I am for fairness. And I will speak my mind, and I won't stand up here with duct tape over my mouth again. But I do think that there's a time and place for any MAC member to stay back from politics. We don't need to have the MAC members involved in local politics, and it's not fair to Gina Orban. So I ask that you take one of her cards, and I am going to end before my 3 minutes, and thank you very much for this moment for me to speak up and speak out. Thank you.
Thank you. David Peach?
David Peach, Joshua Tree, Morongo Basin, San Bernardino County. Well, with more to say than opportunity to say it, at least here, I would first like to just congratulate and also to commend Pat Flanagan. In a statement that was published more widely, Pat Flanagan is a perfect pick, and she's probably more knowledgeable about county codes than any county official, which is extremely valuable. I really miss sitting up there with all y'all. Well, let me take that back. I miss more closely associating with all of y'all, including those of you who thought I was banished to a leprosy colony, or like the chief of staff who thought I should have been. You know, during an episode that's still documented on my seldom seen Facebook page, newly elected Supervisor Ramos was lobbied and I guess persuaded to re-implement the MACs. The MAC meetings are really valuable. It's the only town meeting we have for the entire region. We get valuable insights from our visiting officials and from uniquely informed members of our public such as yourselves. However, MAC recommendations, I don't know if anyone knows that as far as having your voice heard, if the MAC council approves it, field rep can still quash it and bury it, as can the assistant supervisor, the assistant chief of staff rather, as can the chief of staff and as can the supervisor. So if you want to have your voice heard, bear in mind that supervisor meetings occur every other Tuesday, and they're just over here at the teleconferencing center, and your voice goes straight to the top. Reference to what is occurring in Joshua Tree, the sidewalk that's planned for to go from the National Park Visitor Center over on Park Boulevard to the corner. It's a real good idea for the half dozen or so proprietors that are going to profit less than what it costs the taxpayers, and they should pay for it to get it done. But, you know, a project that size normally comes with a $100,000 house. Thank you, Gail. Now, another project, our very honorable MAC chairman and field representative Mike Lipsitz would probably not volunteer to do it loyalty to his employers, but he would attest that supervisors were duped or else in cahoots with the Parks and Rec reference to Section 6. And since Gail's about to run me off, I'll say that Walmart, when they were building their new store, they brought hundreds of truckloads of dirt spread around Joshua Tree, obviously with the county's cooperation. Taxpayers' expense, county made these great big berms, and when the flood came, you know, they formed lakes, and when they dissolved, the floods were compounded. Thank you, Gail. Now those need to be looked at. It's going to rain in other parts of Joshua Tree. The same thing's going to happen elsewhere. Thank you again.
Thank you, David Fitt. If you want to speak again, David Peach, you might stay close. Okay.
David Vick, Joshua Tree. Let's see. I was going to say, the first comment I was going to have was on the CDBG grants. Making the cities the dispensers, in this case, it's Yucca Valley is the dispenser towards Joshua Tree, and informally, I think Yucca Valley hates Joshua Tree. Informally? Well, I'll say informally. There's no formality to it, but we have problems with them. My observation on the floods of September 16th, I noticed when you look at the project, the Altamira project, there is a huge blue line wash on the western third of that project going from, the wash is going downhill from south to north, and Alta Loma, where the bottom of the project is on the south end of it, you look on the other side and the county has allowed houses to be put in the blue line wash that they have to hard line on the other side of the street for this Altamira project. Which means, well, there's two mistakes. Either they're planning for that wash on the Altamira project to be much larger than it is, which that's not what they're doing. What it is the county is putting houses or allowing houses to be in the wrong place. And that's because of the density of housing. The housing density is too dense, too high density for that region, because this region occasionally gets flash floods and they come down fast. So that was part of the problem. And that's about all I was, just an update on the Dollar General situation. The writ of judgment has been released, so I suppose we are going to be waiting for about 60 days. So, but we don't have any press release on it because it just happened. That's it.
Thank you. I have, is Ms. Palucci here? Okay, I believe she made her comment earlier. And we have time for one more comment for someone who didn't fill out a card. If anyone else, Dr. Carmen? It'll be the last comment. We'll move to community reports.
When I was a planning commissioner in Los Angeles County, one of the rules of thumb is that you needed 10 times the period of time of data to know, like for a 10-year rain, what is a 10-year rain? It's, every 10 years you're going to have a big rain. You need 100 years of data. You need 10 times the time frame. Well, to know what a 100-year rain is, you need 1,000 years, and we haven't really been keeping those kind of records. However, one of the things that concerns me about the Joshua Tree situation as described is the fact that with these weird, probably global warming kinds of patterns, everything's wacko. Right now we're in a drought, but when we go the other way and get lots of rain and they're out of water in the East Coast, we could get some really intense flash floods. And the problems that we're saying today, we'd welcome going back to those compared to what will happen. So I would say that this business of drainage, both in Joshua Tree and anywhere there's hills where the water can just concentrate, it's amazing how you can quickly get 2-3 feet of water washing away everything, including your car if it's sitting in a wash, and then 10 minutes later there's nothing. And I think that whole pattern that we see there is going to intensify. That's the good news for the night. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you. I'm scared. If we can move to community reports, Jack, would you like to start?
Hi, Jack Dugan from Pioneer Town. Supervisor Ramos hit on a couple of points that I was going to talk about this evening. About crossing the I's or crossing the T's and dotting the I's. I guess some of that has occurred. I just got a report today from special districts, and a piece of property that they've been negotiating on in principle has been agreed on, and that's one of the key issues of this project. So hopefully, in principle, they'll be able to move on and take care of this project that we've been working on for 14 years. One of the other things that's going on in Pioneer Town and in the area that's really nice to see is the restoration of the town. There's been several business owners that have changed The sound stage, I don't know if those of you that have gone by there, the sound stage has been completely restored. It's up to fire standards. They're going to be putting new sheeting on the outside of it. It's one of the largest buildings in town, and it's been kind of an eyesore. It's got a new roof on it and new siding. They're going to put new walkways out in front, and it's going to be a premier building in town. There's also a new western set going on the east end of town. That's going to be something else that's going to be new. So there's been some new projects, long time in coming up there, and hopefully this water project will get some wings to it and start to fly a little bit. All right, thank you.
Elizabeth Carmen, Yucca Mesa. Say, when are we having a party up there, Jack? I have nothing to report.
Mark Lundquist from Joshua Tree. We've been out of the area for a little bit, but I know that part of the meeting, or the first part of the meeting, was dominated by the actual flood. And I was glad that Supervisor Ramos was here. The timing was perfect. I did get a few emails and contacts that was going to be a major portion of this meeting and on the minds of the people that live in Joshua Tree. And I was glad to see that, in talking to Mike before the meeting, and glad to see that Supervisor came out and toured the area and understands the problems. And we're going to hold them to coming back again and take a look at once they're done with the engineering on it, if that's what they're going to do. So that's been the main topic in the area. I don't know how they're going to do anything like that. I am also concerned about the highway down there with that large culvert that dumps on the highway. It's a little scary when you go by and can realize that there may be a wall of water coming down at one day. Other than that, I guess the music festival went off okay. We weren't here for it. Usually we can hear the music from our house, which is about 5 miles away. And we thoroughly enjoy it. And in fact, I think they're still exiting the park up there. On the way down there, we saw a line of cars with trailers coming out there. I'm also glad to see that everybody's taking these trailers that were sitting in the desert for years and restoring them. There's some great looking old travel trailers out there. So somebody's out there cleaning that mess up and making some money at the same time. That's about it. Thank you.
Max Rossi, Wonder Valley. We're talking about how the weather's quite wacko, and you're quite correct. We had the flood in Joshua Tree, but we had absolutely zero precipitation in Wonder Valley. So we have had zero precipitation all year long, have had no water whatsoever, which has created the dust problem to be exacerbated. We have lots of dust, and it's you expect it because where we live, but the dust problem continues to be a significant issue with the quality of the air that we breathe. Having said that, Supervisor Ramos came over. We met with his people and also with Mike Lipsitz, and we toured Wonder Valley. He got in my car, we went through and saw firsthand the situation with the roads, with the grading, the berms, and it was very encouraging to see his response to say that this will be addressed and that will be addressed. And often you don't know if, will you really do something? And immediately we got phone calls and things were happening, so that was very encouraging. And so that happened this past week, and we saw the maps for Wonder Valley, 134 miles, a large area. And so we toured and drove through, and that was very good. One of the issues that we noted that we had raised earlier is that Amboy Road out in Wonder Valley is getting a lot of traffic, more traffic than the 62 highway. And yet it's a road that has really been outgrown. It's no longer up to code. The road, it's a two-lane road, and it ends right with the dirt. There's no shoulder. It's very soft. And so also raised the issue with Supervisor Ramos. And so that's one of the issues that we have there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike Lipsitz, Landers. You probably heard enough from me tonight. There have been several candidates here, each representing a water district or other smaller districts, but there's one that just walked in, I know, who would represent all of us in Sacramento. And Ms. Hargrove, I know you weren't here for public comment, but if you'd like to take the rest of my time, I'll give you the mic.
Okay. I just want to say hi. I came because I've never been to one of these, and serving on the Morongo Unified School District, it's good to know everything that's going on in the community. So I am a candidate for State Assembly, and I hope to have your vote, and thank you for the time. Very quick.
Thank you. I would offer the same time to your challenger. Were he here? Okay, thank you.
Gail Swart, Morongo Valley. I know we've all talked at past meetings and a lot of the meetings that I go to connected with the MAC that we have trouble communicating with people in the community because everybody's so spread out and it's hard to make contact. Well, last Saturday, the Morongo Valley Firefighters Auxiliary, which is a nonprofit organization that supports our fire department, did their semi-annual breakfast, pancake breakfast. And we sent out, for the first time, a flyer to every post office box and street address in Morongo Valley, which is about 1,986. And we had the best turnout that we have ever had, and we made the most money that we've ever had. These cost 17.5 cents a piece. You can print them on both sides, and they have to be on a little bit heavier cardstock. The post office will tell you. But the advantage you get from spending the money on sending this out, as far as I'm concerned and the Firefighters Auxiliary is concerned, really made a difference. So if anybody's interested in reaching all the people in their area, this is a really great way to do it. So that's my comment for tonight.
Pat Flanagan, Desert Heights. And I'm looking around my area, and we're not coordinated at all out there. And I'd love to talk to the county road people about who does what, when, why. There are roads that are graded on a regular basis. There are roads that are not graded, and frankly, when I look at Wonder Valley and they grade the roads are full of Sahara mustard because they don't clean the tires. But I'd like to know what the rationale is behind grading some roads and then putting on this pretty toxic road chip stuff that they did, and then it washes out and it makes a mess. So I'm going to be looking into that. That upsets me. And if anybody has any comments on that, my email is patflanagan29@gmail.com. The other thing is, I was looking at Google Earth after the flood and listening to people who either had mud coming into their area or had observed it. And the mud really, it appears, when you clear cut something, when you totally clear grade something, you've taken all the root systems out that hold the ground together, and it's those that were down slope from those totally cleared places or that really suffered the most. And it's been in the desert a habit that you go in, you build something, you just grade everything and then put your structure on top of it, and so that can be a real problem. Also, I believe it is now on the Morongo Basin Conservation website. I requested of Joshua Tree National Park to get a fire history and how it relates to Joshua Tree because of the Altamira project, and they gave me a map. And one of the things you can see is that Quail Mountain is a focus for lightning strike fires, and there's a whole bunch of just less than 10-acre lightning strike fires. But my concern with that was that Altamira really wasn't planning for any fires at all. And it's a state responsibility area as you move out of the park for fires. So go ahead and look on the Morongo Basin Conservation Association website to the Altamira. If those of you who aren't aware of this, it was not possible for the county to upload the documents relating to that project. And I requested of the planner that he give them to me on a CD, which he did, and we uploaded them on the Morongo Basin Conservation website. So that's where they are. So that's all I have to say.
I'm Mary Helen Tuttle, Copper Mountain Mesa, and we continue to have our first Saturday of the month breakfasts, which are doing very well, thanks to everyone who comes. The other little dealie that we're doing is we're doing a movie night, and it's on a Saturday night. This Saturday is our third, and we're showing Tarantula. And it's accompanied by Felix the Cat cartoons. And it's just a couple bucks. You bring a chair and a cooler of a beverage of your choice. We have popcorn and snacks to buy, and it's a fun little thing. Some people show up that I've never seen at the community center before, and doing dollars here, 50 cents there, we bring in $200, and that's a third of the way to our monthly electric bill. So that's really good. So that's what's happening out at our little community association. It's Saturday night. The movie starts at 7. Now that it's darker, we get there, and this will probably be the last one for a little while. We're also having on 2 Tuesdays a month, we're going to have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, right? PTSD seminar or meetings, I guess they're called, group meetings by the Pacific Clinics are coming out on Tuesdays. This past Saturday, we had a suicide awareness one, so we're doing a little more in that area, so hopefully we'll qualify for some more tax exemptions. The other thing I wanted to tell everyone is we're talking about the homeless, and I've talked before to you about Morongo Basin Haven. They are an association who are connecting homeless people with goods and services that they need, and they are doing their annual sleeping bag drive right now, where they're passing out donated new or gently used sleeping bags from you to the homeless population in the basin. It's getting cold, and sleeping out in the fields by Home Depot is a little chilly. So if you have or are so inclined to donate some sleeping bags or some gently used ones, you can bring them to the Basin-wide Foundation, which is currently in the the Welcome Center in Yucca Valley. So that's a big thing with them. This coming Friday is a Morongo Basin Haven meeting, and I believe this meeting is a field trip down to Roy's Center in Palm Springs, which is a facility that can house about 100 folks right now. So that's right off the 10. But anyway, if you can go support Morongo Basin Haven, they're starting the homeless repair situation, I guess you could say. So that's it. Thanks.
Mary Helen,
Yeah.
when do the sleeping bags have to be brought?
They're from now until December 1st. So for 2 months, the month of October and the month of November, if you see sleeping bags or some things you want to donate to the homeless, that would be a great thing. Thanks. To the Welcome Center, the California Welcome Center on the highway in Yucca Valley. Okay?
Okay, thank you. And when...
They're just asking for sleeping bags right now. Just sleeping bags, yeah.
With that, we're gonna a comment?
Yucca Mesa is going to have a candidate forum for High Desert Water District October 24th, public at 6 p.m.
Thank you.
What's the status of the Flamingo Heights position?
I just heard from, we have an open seat on the MAC, and that is for a representative from Flamingo Heights. Technically, the representative could be from someone who works or lives in any of the unincorporated area of the Morongo Basin, but ideally, that person would be from Flamingo Heights area. Tori Preston tells us that she has made announcement after announcement. I know she has, and not even a nibble. No interest at all. So if anyone is interested in serving on the MAC, and I've heard from a couple people who don't live in Flamingo Heights and would like to consider them, but so that position remains open. If you let me know if you have interest, and with preference to someone from Flamingo Heights, but otherwise we're going to have to just open it up because we need to fill the seat. Thank you for reminding me about that. I also want to thank Bob Stevenson for coming and recording the meeting, so you can find it on YouTube under under October Big Mac. Big Mac October. Big Mac October, every month, Big Mac and the name of the month. And also Dan Stewart and Kurt Schottner from the Trail and from Z1077 News for covering the meeting. And Shirley Lyon Lundquist for taking our minutes. Thank you, Shirley, for taking on those duties. And the folks from WFN. And I see Tom. Hi, Tom.
I just want to let everybody know something. The Palin project, the big giant solar project that was slated to be built on the southeast corner of Joshua Tree Park down near Desert Center, I don't know if you know, is an 880-foot pair of twin towers, thousands and thousands of mirrors. I just want to give Pat Flanagan a quick round of applause. You may not know this, but she discovered the Achilles tendon in this project that sent them back to a drawing board where they realized they weren't going to be able to meet the demand of the situation, and financially they collapsed. And she
That was, if I do anything that good again in the future, what was it? The situation was, finally, do I?
Go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back in December, I was asked, I was asked by Center for Biological Diversity to be an expert witness on the Palin project because I was the biologist on site in the original solar one. In order to do that, I had to read the California Energy Commission final staff assessment. And I was in the process of commenting on the BLM or EIS on the Palin project. And when I looked at the two of them, the Palin project and their amended physical description said that it would be a 750-foot tower with a 130-foot solar receiver on top of it. That to me says 880 feet. When you look at the BLM EIS, it's a 750-foot tower within which is a 68-foot solar receiver. That doesn't match at all. I initially in December notified them of this. I have at least 4 notifications on the CEC website. I got one letter back from the attorney at the CEC, which just dug them in deeper because she said I needed to go and look at the petition to amend, which was before the final staff assessment, but which is not part of the final staff assessment. So when I see that we have an amended physical description, that means it's changed. So there was a number of, it was just a mess between those two. And so finally, if you go on the CEC website and go to the Palin and you look at and see where Bright Source bowed out, they bowed out at 3:05. I filed at 9:01. And if they didn't get their facility built by 2015 or 16, they were going to lose about $800 million in federal money. So really the point of things is slow them down until they lose their opportunity, and that's what happened. Because they would have had, this was now, for all the times I told them, they shined me on. And they were going to have to now go back, because they were going to get sued, I'm sure, and this would have become part of what the lawyer had to deal with, which is, I think the CEC was correct, so BLM would have had to redo their EIS, and that's like a year's project. So I'm taking credit for that. It was fun. Read the letter. It's a really fun one.
Thank you, Pat. On that note, we're adjourned.